A single keystroke, and 128 flights vanish from the network. Screens across continents flash, Sky Ethica core lockdown engaged, while passengers in first class stare in stunned silence. 20 seconds earlier, the moment Brittany's voice cut through the murmur, "Ma'am, I'm afraid this seat is usually reserved for our VIP clientele." The entire first-class cabin of Skylux Flight 3921 froze. Celeste Morgan stood at the threshold, boarding pass in hand, every eye locked on her. "Tell us where you're watching from," she thought, letting that silent invitation ripple through the rows. She inhaled the soft vanilla scent of the new amenity spray, mingled with the crisp aroma of fresh linens. The tag on her pass gleamed under the overhead light. 1D, Diamond Elite. A seat she'd booked 3 weeks ago, long before someone else claimed it as practically theirs. Before her stood Lydia Whitford, arms crossed, platinum hair gleaming, oversized Hermes bag dangling like a bell's clapper. "Miss Morgan," Brittany continued, voice polite but jittery, "I understand you booked in advance, but Miss Whitford is one of our legacy clients. We usually prioritize her comfort." Celeste met Brittany's gaze coolly. "I respect that," she said, tone measured. "But I also respect the reservation I made according to policy." Around her, the cabin felt electric. An executive in row 2 lifted his phone. A retired judge shifted her magazine to get a better view. Lydia smirked. "I've flown this route longer than you've been in the boardroom, dear. Everyone here knows that." A ripple of disapproval spread. Celeste pressed her lips together, eyes flicking once to her leather tote, its strap embroidered in her grandmother's golden thread with a single word: dignity. She slid the tote aside and extended her boarding pass. "Please confirm." Brittany's forced smile trembled. "We'd be happy to move you to 5A. It's still first class." Celeste nodded once, deliberately. She turned and slipped into 5A with a grace that transformed a forced concession into a statement of control. Phones clicked. Heads swiveled. She opened her laptop as the soft hum of the engine began. Privilege whispers and gestures. Today, it screams. Brittany reappeared moments later with a chilled glass of water. "I'm sorry you had to move, Miss Morgan. We'll make sure 5A is just as comfortable." Celeste accepted the water, lifted it in a small gesture of acknowledgement. "Thank you. Your apology is appreciated." Lydia raised a flute of Dom Perignon, her perfect posture radiating entitlement. "You know," she said, voice carrying, "this route is one of the best in the world. When you know the right people." She took a deliberate sip. Celeste's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Tell us where you're watching from, and watch this." Her watch beeped, 9:03 a.m. Pacific. She typed a single command into a secure terminal. "NGINX activate Sky Ethica core lockdown. Suspend 128 flights. Withdraw 920 MHz ESG funds. Notify FAA and SEC. Initiate federal investigation." She pressed enter. Instantly, her screen flashed. Sky Ethica core lockdown. Engaged. 128 flights suspended. 920 mm ESG funds withdrawn. 3 partner airports non-compliant. Federal probe initiated. The cabin's routine hum faltered. Brittany's hand jolted, ice water sloshing in the glass. Lydia's flute froze halfway to her lips. Passengers fumbled for their phones, alerts buzzing in unison. Skylux network disruption. Global flight shutdown. FAA investigation. Lydia's voice cracked. What did you just do?" Celeste closed her laptop, folding her hands calmly. "I borrowed your seat," she said softly. "So I borrowed your company." Gasps and scattered applause erupted. Even the crew's polished composure shattered. Brittany's eyes shimmered with regret. The power dynamic had flipped at 35,000 feet. She traced a fingertip along her tote's strap, whispering, "Dignity is non-negotiable." Lydia slumped in 1D, her entitlement evaporated. Cameras flashed, screens recorded. The legacy of privilege had just been rewritten by one woman's refusal to bow, and by one decisive command. The plane leveled off into cruising altitude. Celeste let the cabin lights normalize, her expression serene. Around her, conversations reignited, but now with a collective rush of awe. Skylux's network would scramble to restore operations, regulators would ring off their hooks, and headlines would roar. But in this cocoon of leather seats and polished chrome, Celeste Morgan sat unshaken. The real story was just beginning, and everyone on board, and everyone watching from home, would remember what happened when dignity was challenged and when equity prevailed. Celeste sat back in seat 5A, the soft leather cradling her posture just so. Around her, the first-class cabin hummed with a new kind of energy, a charged hush that crackled between whispered conversations and the steady drone of the engines. No one moved to resume business as usual. Instead, passengers clustered in small knots, eyes flicking toward her as though she might speak again, offer an explanation for the sudden cascade of alerts on every device. Sky Ethica core lockdown engaged. 128 flight suspended. 920 Madam ESG funds withdrawn. Federal probe initiated. Brittany hovered just beyond the curtain, tablet forgotten in her hand. Jessica Miller and Trevor Davis exchanged wide-eyed glances. Captain Reynolds stared out the window, jaw tight, hands clasped behind his back. Lydia Whitford, still perched in 1D, sank lower into her seat, her perfect composure crumbling in real time. Celeste tapped her fingertips lightly against her leather tote. The gold thread spelling dignity glinted under the warm cabin lights, a silent reminder of the creed she lived by. She closed her eyes briefly and inhaled, letting the familiar scent of vanilla and fresh linens ground her thoughts. This was never about spectacle. It was about principle. A discreet beep on her watch announced it was 9:05 a.m. Pacific, 2 minutes since she'd pressed enter. In those 2 minutes, she'd transformed a single-seat dispute into a seismic industry event. Now, she simply observed. Passengers' reactions. A businessman in row 2A man with a Sharpie still clutched between his fingers leaned forward and whispered to his wife, "Did you see that? She just knocked Skylux off the map." His wife nodded, eyes wide. Just beyond them, a retired judge murmured, "I've never seen anything like it." Phones fired off video clips and hot takes. Black CEO refuses to bow, freezes 128 flights. First-class coup d'etat, when policy meets power. Even the flight attendants, seasoned professionals trained to anticipate every need, stood frozen. Their routine, polishing silver platters, offering Dom Perignon, tucking blankets over laps, had evaporated. Brittany's jaw quivered as she drew a shaky breath, as if just realizing the gravity of what had unfolded above her pay grade. Jessica pressed her lips together, trying to summon a calm smile. Trevor's knuckles whitened around his tablet. Captain Reynolds straightened at last, squared his shoulders, and met Celeste's gaze through the small glass panel of the curtain. Celeste's inner monologue. Stay calm. Observe. Document. Years of boardroom negotiations had taught her the most potent tool was silence. By speaking softly only once, "I borrowed your seat, so I borrowed your company," she'd allowed the facts to speak louder than any protest. Now, she leaned into that silence, watching clarity rip through the cabin like a shockwave. Her heart rate, measured by the watch strapped to her wrist, held steady at 76 BPM, proof that control was more powerful than adrenaline. Remember Boston. She recalled her childhood, peering out at the Charles River from her father's modest kitchen, watching his napkin sketches of proposed runway expansions. He never sought headlines. His influence was quiet, infrastructural. She'd inherited that blend of vision and discretion, but she'd added something he never needed: strategy. Her fingers brushed the laptop resting on her lap. The screen lay dark now, the terminal closed after the final alert. She could reopen it, verify the sequence of executed commands, check the status of the federal notifications, but the deed was done. Instead, she tapped her journal app, lightly jotting a single line. Observation complete. Next step, boardroom debrief. Crew's response. Brittany swallowed and stepped forward, voice trembling. "Miss Morgan, what happens to us now?" Her color-coordinated uniform, the navy blazer, crisp white blouse, pilot's hat with polished emblem, felt suddenly like armor she no longer needed. Celeste studied Brittany for a moment, empathy stirring behind her calm facade. This was not personal. This was accountability. "You will receive separate notice," Celeste said evenly. "Our non-rehire clause extends to all partner carriers. You'll find your termination letters waiting in your crew lounge." She let that sink in. Brittany nodded, eyes glistening. Jessica and Trevor hovered behind Brittany, ashen-faced. Celeste's gaze shifted to Captain Reynolds. He'd captained this aircraft for 3 decades, guided them through turbulence and emergency drills. Now, he faced a different storm. The man cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I apologize for my conduct." His voice was brittle, honest. Celeste inclined her head. "Acknowledgement is the first step toward integrity. I hope you'll join the Second Chance program. If you do the work, you can rebuild." She offered a small, sincere smile. It was not mercy. It was a structured path to redemption. Lydia's awakening. Lydia Whitford, still in 1D, pushed herself up and fixed Celeste with a look of incredulous fury. "You think you can just take everything away with a keystroke?" Her voice rose, reckless. Celeste leaned forward, crossing her ankles at the wrist. "I am not taking away. I am enforcing policy. You took my seat. I took back the company. That's equity in action." Her tone was mild, but penetrated like a laser. The first hint of uncertainty flickered behind Lydia's eyes, the realization that her entitlement had a cost, and she'd just paid it, publicly. Lydia's lips pressed into a line. For a moment she seemed poised to retort, but the weight of dozens of witnesses, crew, passengers, cameras stilled her voice. She turned away, eyes flicking to her phone as if seeking refuge in a social feed. Passengers as witnesses. A teenager in economy class attire, now turned citizen journalist, rose slightly in her seat and captured the tableau on her smartphone. Had Equity in the Sky glowed on her screen as she live-streamed. Older couples leaned together, whispering, "She's right." A handful of passengers even gave Celeste a polite but genuine round of applause. The cabin had shifted from polite luxury to a crucible of justice. Celeste allowed herself a brief nod in appreciation. She'd always believed the best arguments were witnessed, not proclaimed. Here, witnessed they were. Flashed to headquarters thousands of miles below, trading floors buzzed. Skylux's stock ticker, SKX, jumped 18% in a flurry of green. Analysts scrambled to interpret the hostile takeover in mid-air. Financial news crawls ran staggering figures: 128 suspended flights, 920 million ESG freeze, federal probe underway. Press release drafts circulated through Skylux's PR channels. Urgent, interim chair appointment, service suspension details, regulatory liaising, Celeste's reflection. As the hum of cell signals returned and cabin lights brightened, Celeste closed her eyes again. She pictured the conference room in Washington, D.C., where the board would assemble within the hour. She recounted the faces she'd meet, the CEO who underestimated her, the board members who'd assumed she was just another passenger, the agency representatives curious for a statement. One name on every agenda: Celeste Morgan. She flexed her fingers, feeling the smoothness of her wedding band. It was always a reminder: power paired with partnership, personal integrity anchored by shared values. Setting the next steps. Celeste reopened her journal app and typed, 9:07 a.m. PT. Lockdown engaged. Confirm board debrief at 10:15 a.m. DC time. Coordinate with Morgan Equinox Council. Draft public statement for 11:00 release. Prepare passenger compensation plan. She tapped save and tucked the laptop aside. Her gaze wandered across the cabin, her second passenger round, as she called it. Each face carried a story: surprise, indignation, respect, curiosity. She would need their testimonies later, and the world would need their witness. Cabin resumes motion. Brittany returned with a tray of canapés, her expression resolute, but her hands still trembling. "Would you care for smoked salmon?" she asked. Celeste accepted one, savoring the cool tang of cream cheese and caper. "Thank you," she said. "It's delicious." Lydia watched her, glass poised. Celeste held the canapé lightly, then set it down. "You might try policy adherence next time," she offered, voice gentle. "It's the best way to avoid surprises." Lydia's breath caught. It was the softest reprimand, but the most cutting. Lydia lowered her glass, staring at the tray in front of her, as if seeing it anew. Tension eases, but purpose remains. The cabin gradually returned to service. Flight attendants resumed their duties, though every movement carried the weight of what they'd just witnessed. Passengers settled back, some scrolling social feeds, others sharing wide-eyed reactions. The hush that had gripped them morphed into a buzz of excited conversation. Celeste leaned back, hands folded, and let the mild churn of cabin chatter wash over her. Her mind raced ahead. The board meeting, the press conference, the rollout of 48-hour bias lockdown, the second chance program, the industry-wide reforms. Each step needed precision, just like the keystroke that had set it all in motion. Yet for now, she allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. She'd taken back her seat. She'd enforced equity. She'd reminded every passenger and every executive that dignity was not a privilege, but a right. As Flight 3921 climbed toward cruising altitude, Celeste Morgan sat composed, her gaze fixed on the oval window. Beyond the clouds, the world waited. And she would arrive not just as a passenger, but as the force that reshaped an airline. Celeste leaned back in 5A, the roar of the engines a distant anchor as her mind drifted into memory. The cabin lights dimmed for in-flight service, but her thoughts were bright with recollections of boardrooms in Boston, rooms where she'd learned her first lessons in invisibility. She saw herself at 28, fresh out of Harvard Business School, stepping into a gleaming glass tower on Beacon Street. The brass elevator doors had slid open to reveal polished floors and the soft murmur of analysts poring over spreadsheets. She had clutched her resume, determined, but as she crossed the threshold, heads had barely turned. A senior partner had waved her toward the back, addressing her as "young lady" when she'd asked for the conference room. She recalled the hollow click of high heels echoing down the hallway as she fetched coffee for the men in pinstripe suits. The memory burned warm, humiliation laced with resolve. She'd learned then that power often wore a familiar face, polite condescension. She placed cream and sugar on the corner of a mahogany table, then spoke up, laying out a 5-year growth strategy. Eyes had finally met hers, registering surprise. That surprise had fueled her. By age 30, she'd founded Morgan Equinox Capital in a converted loft overlooking the Charles River. The walls were bare at first, the overhead pipes exposed. She'd hired a skeleton crew, an analyst, a legal counsel, and herself. Their first clients were family friends and overlooked infrastructure firms. Each pitch deck had to be bulletproof. She'd sweat over every line, every chart. She remembered closed-door meetings where her voice cracked when describing runway expansions or leveraged buyouts. When a board member asked if she needed a pencil to take notes, she'd held back a retort. Instead, she'd projected confidence, knowing her numbers would speak. Her phone buzzed, an echo of the cabin's own alerts, and she pictured that loft, now a center of power managing $36 billion in assets. She'd inherited her father's engineer's precision and her grandmother's unwavering dignity. Sitting there, forcing both skill and respect into a male-dominated arena, she'd signed the first big acquisition. She'd felt adrenaline, and beneath it, a quiet thrill that she could bend systems to her will, quietly but irrevocably. But victory had never been gentle. At quarterly reviews, she'd stood before seasoned investors, breathing shallowly as they scrutinized projections in stark chairs. One had leaned back and mused that transportation was a traditional market, code for too dull for disruptive strategies. Celeste had smiled, tapping her pen against her tablet, watching the cursor blink, transform undervalued assets into industry leaders. When she delivered a 12-point plan showing a 102% return in 18 months, the same skeptic had nodded, cheeks reddening. That nod had tasted like triumph, but the embers of doubt had lingered. She recalled late nights in the office, the skyline of Beacon Hill glittering beyond the windows. She'd sketched proposals on napkins, runway layouts, terminal redesigns, passenger flow algorithms. She'd scrawled dignity in the margin, a reminder that infrastructure was about people, not just pipes and steel. When she lost her father to illness, she'd carried his pen in her pocket for weeks, as if his legacy would flow through her grip. Every deal she closed after that was a tribute to his vision, a way to honor quiet influence. Her first major airline investment had felt like coming full circle, bringing her father's unrecognized genius to the skies. But the gendered looks, the muted thanks, the assumption she was a token, those had chipped at her resolve. She'd walked into a boardroom in New York, introducing herself as Celeste Morgan, fiancée of Mr. Morgan, before cutting them off and restating, Celeste Morgan, founder and CEO of Morgan Equinox. She'd seen the slack-jawed surprise, and in that crack in their posture lay her next opportunity. Back in the cabin, Brittany had cleared her throat, offering another glass of water. Celeste accepted it with a nod, her posture unshaken. The echo of those boardroom battles gave her perspective. This was another test of authority. When Lydia Whitford had dismissed her claim to 1D, it had been a throwback to those early days when her seat at the table had been negotiable. But that had changed. 6 months ago, when Morgan Equinox acquired a controlling stake in a major logistics firm, she'd proven that reputation could be reshaped by action, not just words. She thought of the countless boardroom corners where she'd whispered strategy to confidants, away from the male chorus of experts. She remembered drafting the clause for non-rehire across partner carriers, slipped into the shareholder agreement a year prior as a safeguard. How many investors had skimmed right past it? Now, her laptop's glow had brought that clause to life in midair, a final echo of every challenge she'd met. Celeste's watch beeped again, 9:12 a.m. Pacific. The engines droned, steady. She took a slow sip of water, recalling her grandmother's advice. Patience and power go hand in hand. She set the glass down, her fingertips brushing the strap of her tote. The gold stitch glinted, dignity, her silent mantra. She pressed New Note in her journal app and typed, Chapter 3, Reflection Fuels Strategy. Observation refines execution. Then she added bullet points. Legacy of invisibility. Catalyst for systemic change. Napkin sketches. Blueprint for equity. Quiet takeover clause. Mid-air execution. Next, boardroom entrance. Public accountability, she paused, letting the words sink in. These reflections would shape her approach in D.C., where the Skylux board awaited her arrival. They'd seen her fire lines of code. Now they'd see her lead meetings. At that moment, a passenger in row 4 rose to fetch a magazine. He paused, nodded at her in silent respect. A flight attendant, regaining composure, offered a round of canapes, this time without tremor. The cabin, once polarized, now hummed with collaborative energy. Phones were out of pockets. Live streams rolling, networks alight with speculation. The hush had become a chorus. Celeste closed her laptop, sliding it into her tote. She straightened, crossing her legs at the ankle, hands folded. She allowed herself a quiet smile. This wasn't arrogance. It was quiet vindication. The echoes of her past had shaped this moment. The coffee runs, the mispronounced name, the boardroom nods of surprise. Those echoes had sharpened her resolve. The overhead sign flickered off as Flight 3921 leveled for cruising altitude. The cabin lights regained their soft glow. Brittany returned with a warm towel, offering it with a tentative smile. "Here you go, Miss Morgan." She accepted it, nodding. "Thank you, Brittany." Brittany's shoulders relaxed fractionally, as if some unspoken tension had released. Celeste's gaze met hers. In that moment, mentorship flickered between them, an unspoken invitation to learn, to grow beyond errors, to reclaim dignity. Below them, Skylux's trading floor buzzed. Below that, regulators prepared statements. Soon, the world would discuss the hostile takeover at 35,000 feet and dissect every clause of the shareholder agreement. But here, in 5A, Celeste Morgan carried the quiet power of her history, of every slight endured, every strategy conceived, every victory won in silence. She leaned back once more, glancing at the oval window. Clouds drifted by, receding into the horizon. In the cabin around her, the passengers no longer whispered about entitlement. They whispered about justice, about equity, about a woman who refused to be unseen. And in that hush, born of reflection and resolve, Celeste found her next spark for change. Every story had its prologue. Every revolution began with awareness. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the past inform her present, anchoring her for the battles ahead. Below, the engines thrummed. Above, the sky was endless. And between them, Celeste Morgan sat poised, her dignity intact, her strategy clear, her future unfolding as surely as dawn. Celeste leaned forward in her seat, the hum of the engines a steady metronome against the tight drumbeat of her thoughts. She flipped open her laptop again, notepad blinking on her secure terminal. Through the small curtain, she could see the flight attendants regrouping, Brittany's trembling hands still hovering over the service cart, Jessica Miller and Trevor Davis exchanging uneasy glances. Captain Reynolds stood by the cockpit door, glancing back at the first-class cabin as if seeking reassurance. She tapped the secure comms channel, connecting her private counsel at Morgan Equinox Capital. The screen refreshed in seconds. 9:18 a.m. PT. Celeste Morgan. Eliza Chen. Lead counsel. Lockdown engaged. Need confirmation of acquisition clause execution. A heartbeat passed. Then Eliza's response scrolled up. Confirmed. Clause 7.4.2 executed at 9:12 a.m. 51% controlling interest. All regulatory filings queued. Non-rehire protocols active. Celeste exhaled slowly, grateful for precision. She typed back. Excellent. Next, prepare board indentures for 10:15 a.m. stand. Send to DC Council. Inform SEC liaison. She watched Eliza's cursor flash as the orders were acknowledged. Eliza added, "On it. Flight manifest flagged. Crew notices will auto-generate upon landing. Lobby team mobilized." Click. The conversation closed. Celeste minimized the window and let her fingers rest on the warm leather armrest. Behind the scenes, she thought. Every step orchestrated months ago. A discreet ping on her smartwatch reminded her of the time. 9:20 a.m. Pacific. 40 minutes to landing in DC and 35 minutes until her first public address as interim chairperson of Skylux Airlines. She swiveled slightly to survey the cabin. Passengers who'd captured the mid-air coup on their phones now whispered excited theories. Corporate sabotage, tech hack, aesthetic stunt. None guessed the careful choreography behind the shock. No theatrics, no shouting. Just a quiet command executed flawlessly. Brittany returned to 5A with a silver tray. a delicate plate of smoked salmon canapes, a small bowl of caviar, and chilled water. "Miss Morgan," she said, voice steadier now, "I wanted to ensure you have everything you need." Celeste offered a warm, professional smile. "Thank you, Brittany. Everything looks perfect." She gestured toward the tray. "Please thank the crew." Brittany nodded and retreated. As the flight attendant passed behind her, Celeste reached for the salmon, savoring its silky texture. She chewed thoughtfully, letting the flavor anchor her in the moment. Observation, planning, execution. She tapped a quick note. "Canapes confirm service restoration. Good optics." In the seat behind her, the corporate consultant whispered, "That's some serious power play." His wife nodded. "I've never seen anything like it." Celeste closed her notebook. It was time to shift from execution mode to transition mode. Over the next minutes, she'd need to refine her public remarks. Concise, authoritative, compassionate. She slid her laptop into her tote and retrieved a slim leather-bound folder, her speech outline and talking points. She leafed through the pages. Acknowledgement of incident, statement of equity principle, outline of immediate measures, introduction of 48-hour bias lockdown, launch of second chance program, call for industry collaboration. Each point was bullet-pointed, verbatim phrases already vetted by counsel. She toggled the folder closed, tucking it snugly beside her laptop. A soft chime signaled the captain's voice over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent into Washington, D.C. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts." Seatbelt signs glowed. Overhead lights brightened. Passengers adjusted positions, resumed seat back upright. Brittany checked her tablet, tapping through the auto-generated crew termination notices. Celeste smiled inwardly. Each notification triggered the next domino in her plan. One domino, 5 years of planning. She thought back to when she'd slipped Clause 7.4.2 into the shareholder agreement. Council had questioned its necessity. Board members had passed it off as boilerplate. She'd insisted on its inclusion, a quiet safeguard. Today, it had become the fulcrum of justice. The cabin's energy shifted. Anticipation replaced shock. Some passengers exchanged apologies toward crew. Others simply sat in reflective silence. Celeste leaned back, folding her arms. The tray table flicked open, and she took out her folder again. She ran her eyes over the notes, muffling the rustle of paper as she rehearsed key lines. This was never about punishment. It was about fairness. Our duty is to ensure every passenger's dignity. Every member of our crew deserves respect and accountability. She paused when Brittany appeared at her side, tablet in hand. "Miss Morgan, the crew will be ready to meet you in the Gate 12 conference room. They've been informed of your request." Celeste inclined her head. "Thank you. Please ensure they have water and privacy." Brittany gave a small, relieved nod. "Right away." She hurried off, clipped heels echoing. Celeste's chest tightened with both resolve and a trace of compassion. She'd just stripped 20 crew members of their positions, but she'd also offered them a path to redemption. It was the hard balance of leadership. She closed her folder and tucked it under her arm, then rose gracefully. She gathered her laptop and tote, smoothing the lapel of her tailored black blazer. The exact moment she stood would define the next narrative. No fanfare, no frustration, just quiet authority. As she slipped into the aisle, phones lifted to capture her first steps post-lockdown. A hush fell again, punctuated by shutter clicks. Celeste met each gaze with steady eye contact, nodding in silent greeting. The corridor to the front of the plane felt both narrow and timeless, like the path she'd walked in boardrooms for decades. Captain Reynolds stepped aside near the flight deck curtain. His uniform now felt like a memory of a different era, the era just ended. He offered a crisp salute, a gesture of respect. Celeste returned it with a brief nod. Command passed. She reached the curtain, paused, and took a breath. Beyond lay the small lounge, the crew rest area turned boardroom for the moment. Deputy managers, flight supervisors, and the terminated crew awaited her presence. She paused inside the breeze of conditioned air. Before her, the conference table sat ready, chairs aligned. On it, folders stamped, confidential, termination orders, non-rehire memoranda, and invitations to second chance. Regulatory liaisons and legal counsel had already taken their places. Celeste squared her shoulders, smoothing her hair. She stepped in, the hush of the cabin replaced by the sterile hum of fluorescent lights. All eyes turned to her, crew, assistants, Captain Reynolds, and the senior flight operations manager. She offered a poised, empathetic smile. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me on short notice. I know this has been an extraordinary flight." Heads nodded. Brittany stood nearest, eyes glossy but attentive. Trevor Davis and Jessica Miller flanked her, faces a mix of shame and curiosity. Celeste continued, her tone balanced. "Today, we confronted a failure of service and respect. My actions in the cabin were not personal vendettas. They were necessary enforcement of policy. Each of you will receive a formal notice of termination as per the non-rehire clause effective across all partner carriers. However, I believe in accountability and growth." She paused, letting the weight of that statement settle. The room was quiet. She unfolded the first folder and placed it before Brittany. "Miss Shaw, your notice. Similar documents await each of you." Shock rippled through the crew. Brittany's lips trembled. Jessica's pupils dilated. Trevor sucked in a breath, but Celeste held her gaze. "I'm also launching Second Chance, a 6-month retraining and mentorship program. Those willing to participate can reapply under rigorous standards." Murmurs rose, some incredulous, some hopeful. The soft click of pens opening signaled the shift from accusation to potential redemption. Celeste added quietly, "I understand this isn't easy, but our commitment to dignity demands we hold ourselves to the highest standard. You have 2 hours to review your documents. A representative will accompany you to the next steps." She closed her folder, straightened, and offered one more nod. "Thank you." Celeste turned and walked back toward the curtain. Cameras in the cabin caught her exit. No dramatic flourish, just a composed stride. Passengers whispered, "She's a real leader." Dignity indeed. Back in 5A, she collected her tote, laptop, and folder. Brittany returned with a final glass of water. "Anything else, Miss Morgan?" Celeste smiled, soft, assured. "No, thank you." She set the glass down, adjusted her blazer, and prepared for landing. As Flight 3921 began its descent into DC, Celeste found her seat once more. Around her, the cabin had transformed, from a battleground of entitlement to a theater of accountability. She leaned back, folded her hands, and watched the runway lights approach. Below, the boardroom was ready. In minutes, she would step off this plane as interim chairperson of Skylux Airlines, guiding an entire industry toward a new standard. One where policy, principle, and dignity were the true markers of power. Celeste's fingertip hovered above the enter key for a breathless moment, the cabin lights reflecting off her laptop's polished aluminum surface. The soft murmur of boarding chatter felt like a distant memory. The tension in the first-class cabin was thick enough to taste. She glanced out the oval window. Endless sky, infinite possibility. Then, with a steady exhale, she pressed enter. Immediately, the screen filled with bold alerts. Sky Ethica core lockdown engaged, 128 flights. Suspended, 920 on ESG funds. Withdrawn, 3 partner airports, non-compliant. Federal investigation initiated. Her heart fluttered, just a pinch faster than normal. Inside, she felt that familiar spark of triumph, the quiet thrill of a plan executed flawlessly. This was the moment everything shifted. Brittany's hand jolted, the silver tray rattling as she steadied herself. Jessica Miller, the head flight attendant, let out a small gasp. Trevor Davis, cabin supervisor, stared at his tablet as it lit up with automated termination notices. Captain Reynolds, ever composed, leaned against the cockpit doorframe, shoulders stiff, eyes narrowed behind his aviator shades. Passengers fumbled for their phones. Notifications buzzed in rapid succession. Skylux network disruption. Global flight suspension. ESG funds freeze. FAA and SEC probe alert. A businessman 2 rows back knocked his latte off the tray. A young woman in the window seat nearly dropped her phone. A retired judge clutched her pearls, jaw slack with astonishment. Celeste closed her laptop gently and tucked it under her arm. The soft click of the screen folding was drowned out by the cacophony of startled gasps, whispers, and the electronic pulse of modern alarms. "Did you see that?" A man in a pinstripe suit asked his companion. "She just froze half the network." His wife shook her head. "I've never witnessed anything like it." A young entrepreneur filmed the cabin with one hand, the other typing a rapid caption, "Equity in the sky." His on-screen count ticked upward by the second. Likes, shares, comments pouring in. Across the aisle, a mother and daughter huddled, heads close together. The daughter whispered, "Mom, that was insane." The mother nodded, eyes bright. She did what no one else dared. Even the flight attendants leaned in, drawn to the drama. The soft squeak of trolley wheels on carpet seemed impossibly loud, a drummer calling troops to battle. In the curtained-off service area, Brittany watched her tablet's "Lockdown Confirmed" message. Her chest heaved. She tapped "Acknowledge," but the screen's confirmation strobed like a police siren. Then automated messages scrolled. "Miss Shaw, termination effective upon landing. Jessica Miller, non-rehire across Jetlink, Aero West, Nova Fleet. Trevor Davis, Captain Reynolds." Same protocol. She swallowed. What did I do?" she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. Jessica stepped forward, voice trembling. This can't be real." Her professional confidence cracked. I thought she was joking." Trevor's jaw clenched, then relaxed in a heavy exhale. She actually did it. Captain Reynolds removed his shades, revealing eyes that flickered with anger, fear, and something like respect. He cleared his throat. "I've flown this route 1,000 times, he said quietly. "Never seen anything like this." Inside Celeste, a wave of vindication rolled through her chest, warm and electric. But beneath that lay something steadier. Resolve. This wasn't about feeling powerful. It was about delivering justice. The faces around her, passengers, crew, were witnesses to a profound shift. Control had passed, not with bombastic fury, but with a single, decisive click. Mission. Observation was complete. Mission. Transition was next. She sipped the chilled water Brittany had placed at her seat, savoring its cold clarity. Behind the calm facade, her mind raced through the next steps, finalizing her remarks, coordinating with counsel, and ensuring every regulatory box was ticked. Thousands of miles below, Skylux's trading floor erupted. Screens flashed green as SKX spiked 17% on rumor and reality. Analysts barked into headsets. "Is this a coordinated hostile takeover? Get legal counsel on standby. Our filings have been triggered. Inform PR. This is a global story in mid-air." In the PR war room, communications directors danced between drafting statements and patching into crisis lines. News outlets teemed with speculation. Hacking? Rogue executive? High-altitude coup? The press release pipeline groaned under the volume of urgent tags. Back in 5A, Celeste closed her eyes, leaning her head against the seat back. She felt the gentle pull of gravity as the plane leveled off. The tension in the cabin had shifted from shock to anticipation. A buzz of whispered commentary replaced outright panic. Her watch beeped again, 9:14 a.m. Pacific. In just under 2 minutes, she'd stand to make her announcement. One that would shape headlines, stock charts, and the destiny of Skylux Airlines. She placed a hand on her tote, the golden-stitched dignity strap resting beneath her fingertips. For a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to reflect on how far she'd come. From fetching coffee in Boston boardrooms to flipping the power structure of a global airline at 35,000 feet, dignity has no altitude limit. She slid from 5A into the aisle, gathering her laptop and folder of talking points. Phones pointed in her direction, screens bright with live footage. Passengers parted respectfully, some offering nods of encouragement. One or two even offered a thumbs up. She walked past Brittany, whose eyes glistened with unshed tears. Celeste reached out and placed a gentle hand on Brittany's shoulder. "Thank you for everything," she said softly. "I know this wasn't easy." Brittany blinked, offering a trembling smile. I'm sorry." Celeste squeezed her shoulder briefly, then stepped on. No drama, no fanfare, just a leader walking toward her moment. At the front of the cabin, the flight deck curtain trembled slightly. Captain Reynolds gave a crisp salute. Celeste returned it, then slipped behind the curtain into the crew rest area, transformed, for now, into her stage. The trigger had been pulled. The shockwave had reverberated through cabins, corporate offices, and social media feeds worldwide. But the real impact was yet to unfold. The boardroom debrief, the press conference, the rollout of systemic reforms. Between privilege and principle, policy and power, Celeste Morgan stood ready to guide the next wave of change. And all it had taken was one resolute enter to turn a seating dispute into a revolution for dignity. Celeste sat perfectly still in 5A, her posture relaxed but alert, as the first ripples of chaos spread through the cabin. The overhead bins rattled as flight attendants hurried past, murmuring into tablets and headsets. Brittany, pale-faced and breathless, darted between rows, her navy blazer unbuttoned as she tried to regain composure. Jessica Miller and Trevor Davis clustered near the service cart, exchanging frantic glances over the blinking tablet screens. A ripple of gasps traveled down the aisle as passengers scrolled through their notifications. Sky Ethica core lockdown engaged. 128 flight suspended. 920 in ESG funds withdrawn. 3 partner airports non-compliant. A teenager in economy class attire craned her neck into first class, phone held aloft, broadcasting live. She just froze half the network, no lie. The cabin filled with a low hum of astonished whispers. Lydia Whitford, still perched in 1D, clutched her Dom Perignon flute so tightly her knuckles whitened. Her eyes darted from her half-empty glass to Celeste, as if trying to understand how a simple seat dispute had escalated into an industry-wide standstill. Brittany's voice cracked as she addressed a nearby colleague. Did you read that? We're suspended? All flights?" Her words tumbled out, breathless. Jessica pressed a trembling finger to her tablet. "It's all in here. Termination notices, non-rehire clauses. It's real." Trevor shook his head, as if trying to clear away a bad dream. "Mid-flight, they're sending our termination orders, and it's final? How is that even legal?" Captain Reynolds, coaching his uniform jacket back into place, stepped into the aisle. His voice, usually calm and authoritative, held an edge of uncharacteristic tension. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We're coordinating with operations to assess the situation." He locked eyes with Celeste through the small curtain window, a silent acknowledgement that this was no ordinary incident. Across the aisle, a group of business travelers whispered in low tones. One muttered, "I've never seen an airline do that. Full takeover from 35,000 feet." Another replied, "She turned a seating fight into a boardroom coup. You've got to admit, it's genius." Even the older couple in row 3, once politely demure, leaned forward. The husband tapped his wife's arm. "We should thank her," he said, voice soft but certain. "If it were me, I'd never have the guts." Celeste observed all this with a calm smile. Inside, her pulse raced, just enough to remind her she was alive. But her exterior remained composed. She understood that true leadership was measured in poise under pressure, not in loud declarations. Her gaze drifted to the tablet messages still displayed on Brittany's handheld screen. Miss Shaw, termination effective upon landing. Jessica Miller, non-rehire across all partner carriers. Trevor Davis, Captain Reynolds. Same protocol. Brittany swallowed hard, eyes brimming. This can't be happening, she whispered. Celeste lifted a single finger in a quiet gesture of reassurance. Brittany, she said softly, you did what you were trained to do. Now we must all adapt. That one line, gentle, empathetic, seemed to steady Brittany. She nodded once, eyes still glossy, and tapped a few keys, sending a confirmation back to the operations team. In the seat behind Celeste, a retired judge cleared her throat. I must say, she murmured to the woman next to her, I never imagined I'd witness policy enacted so swiftly. This is history in the making. Celeste caught that comment and allowed herself a small, appreciative nod. She had become an unwitting historian, rewriting the rules of mid-air conduct with a single action. The cabin stilled for a moment as the initial shock gave way to logistical questions. Passengers checked boarding passes, whispered into headsets, sought updates. Flight attendants returned to their stations, moving with renewed purpose. Some distributed water. Others offered blankets, while a few discreetly texted supervisors. Captain Reynolds stepped forward again. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced in a steady voice, I've just spoken with operations. We will land as scheduled, but please remain seated until we receive further instructions. Celeste folded her hand and let out a slow breath. The engine's drone resumed its normal cadence. The cabin lights glowed softly overhead. The material world carried on, yet beneath the surface, everything had changed. Lydia Whitford, finally finding her voice, whispered loudly enough for several passengers to hear. She did that from her seat. Celeste offered a serene smile and raised her water glass. To policies followed, she said, voice gentle, and to dignity upheld. A ripple of quiet laughter and relieved sighs washed through the cabin. Even Lydia managed a shaky half-smile, as if acknowledging that decorum still had a place, even in revolution. For a fleeting moment, at 35,000 feet, the first-class cabin felt like a microcosm of the larger world. Challenges confronted, systems tested, and the quiet triumph of principle. Celeste Morgan sat back, letting the restored calm settle around her. The real battles lay ahead, in boardrooms and press rooms. But for now, she allowed herself to savor the victory of a moment dictated not by privilege, but by policy, and by unwavering dignity. Screens across Chicago's trading floor flooded with green as SKX skyrocketed 17% in minutes. Analysts abandoned their cappuccinos, eyes glued to monitors. Hostile takeover at 35,000 feet, one ticker read. Phones rang off the hook as traders shouted into headsets, scrambling to adjust positions before the market locked. In a glass-walled conference room overlooking Lake Michigan, Richard Williams pounded his fist on the maple conference table. His salt and pepper hair was disheveled, tie loosened. "What the hell just happened?" he barked. Around him, department heads and board members exchanged panicked glances. Naomi Patel, head of investor relations, tapped furiously at her keyboard. "We just got the notice, Richard. Morgan Equinox executed clause 7.4.2, 51% acquisition confirmed." She scrolled through the auto-generated legal summary. Effective 10:12 a.m. CT. Control transferred to Celeste Morgan, interim chairperson appointed. The words glowed ominously on the screen. Sales projections, risk analyses, even the latest passenger satisfaction surveys, all irrelevant now. The boardroom fell into stunned silence. David Lee, general counsel, cleared his throat. "We need a legal strategy immediately. If we resist, Morgan Equinox can leverage our governance rules to override any board objections. We must comply, or risk an injunction." His voice was measured, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. Across the room, Sophia Nguyen, PR director, opened a draft statement titled Urgent. Skylux acknowledges change in majority ownership. She frowned, erasing overwrought apologies. We need clarity, not panic. Acknowledge the change, reaffirm our commitment to service, and outline immediate steps. Bias training, service review. She glanced at Richard. Something like, we embrace this transition and will work collaboratively with Ms. Morgan to enhance the passenger experience. He waved a hand. No spin. We're on the back foot. Let's stick to facts. Change in ownership, appointment of interim chair, commitment to policy compliance. Then we present our willingness to cooperate. Meanwhile, on the trading floor outside, screens showed news feeds from Reuters, Bloomberg, and CNBC. Black CEO overthrows airline mid-flight. Industry shock, air travel network paralyzed. Equity in the sky, a new era for Skylux. Traders shouted buy and sell orders, some celebrating profits, others scrambling to limit losses. The air was thick with adrenaline and dread. Back in the PR war room, a dozen staffers huddled around a colossal whiteboard littered with bullet points. Immediate action. Issue official statement by 11 o'clock a.m. Key messages. Equity, transparency, service excellence, media outreach. Coordinate interviews with Celeste Morgan and Richard Williams. Social media. Mute automated responses. Craft authentic posts. Samantha Lee, social media manager, leaned back in her chair. We're getting hundreds of mentions per minute. Equity in the sky is trending #1 worldwide. If we don't engage authentically, we'll lose control of the narrative. She drafted a tweet. Skylux Airlines confirms change in majority ownership. We welcome Ms. Morgan's leadership and are committed to upholding equitable service for all passengers. She hesitated, then hit schedule. Within seconds, notifications pinged across platforms. In the operations center below, floor managers and scheduling staff scrambled to reroute the 128 suspended flights. Screens showed red icons for grounded aircraft, stalled at gate or mid-journey. Maintenance crews were dispatched. Customer service reps braced for calls from stranded passengers. The hum of prior routine was replaced by clattering chaos. Back in the glass-walled boardroom, Richard's voice was hoarse. We need to regroup. I want daily updates, market, operations, regulatory. Get me a crisis task force by noon. He rubbed his temples. And find out how we underestimated her. Who let that clause slip through? David Lee exhaled. Our team vetted every clause last quarter. It was presented as a protective measure. No one foresaw a live execution in midair. He tapped his legal pad. We'll need to audit our governance process as soon as we stabilize. Just then, Naomi's phone buzzed with a video clip. Live footage from first class on Flight 3921. On the small screen, Celeste Morgan stood in the aisle, laptop folded, addressing passengers with measured grace. The cabin behind her was a portrait of awe and respect. Naomi showed the clip around the table. Look at how composed she is. She's not just a corporate force, she's a master of optics. A nervous laugh rippled through the group. We look like amateurs. Richard watched the video on replay. Celeste's calm posture, her quiet affirmation, to policy and dignity, held him captive. He leaned forward, voice low. We need to salvage this. Reach out to her team. Maybe there's a way to position this as a partnership, not a coup. Sophia stroked her chin. We can propose a joint press conference, show unity. But we'll need to align on key messages. She'll want equity. We'll need to accept that. Outside, the wind whipped across Lake Michigan, a reminder that storms could clear the air. Inside, the boardroom bristled with tension, but also with the first spark of cooperation. Thousands of feet above, Celeste Morgan prepared her concluding remarks, unaware of every tumult below. Thousands of miles away, Skylux's leaders were on the brink of reinvention, forced by a single mid-air event to confront systemic bias and embrace a new era of leadership. In the charged aftermath of her quiet revolution, the world watched and waited to see whether the airline that once privileged entitlement would rise to honor equity under its new interim chair. Passengers disembarked at Gate 12 to a swarm of reporters and camera lights. A makeshift podium stood against the backdrop of Skylux's blue and white logo, flanked by banners proclaiming "Committed to Change" and "Dignity is non-negotiable." Celeste Morgan stepped forward, the flashbulbs reflecting in her calm eyes. She tapped the microphone once and let the applause die down. "Good afternoon," she began, voice steady. "What unfolded on Flight 3921 was unacceptable, a clear failure of service and respect." She paused, scanning the crowd of cameras, journalists, and curious travelers. "I want to apologize to every passenger whose experience fell short of our promise." The reporters scribbled furiously, a headline in the making. "Interim Chair delivers apology and promise of reform." Celeste continued, "I've taken immediate action. The crew involved have been removed, and a 48-hour bias lockdown is in effect across all flights. Every Skylux employee, from cabin crew to senior management, will participate in immersive training designed to confront and correct unconscious prejudice." A hush fell. Someone shouted, "What about the terminated staff?" She nodded. "We're also launching Second Chance, a 6-month mentorship program for those who demonstrate genuine commitment to change. Because accountability should lead to growth, not just punishment." Journalists murmured approval. Phones clicked. Behind her, a large monitor cycled through social media feeds. "This seat is mine, trending #1 worldwide. Justice in the sky, spiking at 2 million posts." Celeste gestured toward the screen. "Our passengers have spoken. They demand equity in the skies, not just luxury." She unveiled the next slide, a timeline. Day 1-2, bias lockdown sessions. Day 3, public release of training results. Week 1, launch of passenger feedback portal. Month 1, independent audit of service policies. "We will share our progress transparently," she said. "Every quarter, we'll publish metrics on complaint reduction, customer satisfaction, and training outcomes. No hidden data." A reporter from Reuters raised her hand. "Ms. Morgan, how will you rebuild public trust?" Celeste smiled. "By listening and by acting. Today's apology and these initiatives are just the beginning. We'll host town hall forums at major hubs, invite passenger input, and collaborate with civil rights organizations to ensure our policies reflect real needs." She offered one final thought. Privilege should never be confused with policy. At Skylux, the rule of law and the rule of decency stand side by side. That is the new Skylux promise. Applause rippled through the terminal. Phones recorded every word. Hashtags exploded. "Skylux apologizes, launches equity overhaul. 48-hour bias lockdown, airline leads industry. Second chance for flight crew, redemption or risk." In that moment, Celeste Morgan embodied a public reckoning. Not a PR stunt, but a genuine commitment to systemic reform. As she stepped away from the podium, passengers approached to shake her hand, some with tears in their eyes. Behind the scenes, Skylux's crisis team monitored sentiment, customer tweets shifting from outrage to guarded optimism. Internally, managers prepared for the overnight shutdown of flights for training, assessment teams ready at every hub. Celeste paused at the edge of the crowd, watching a young man post a selfie with her in the background, captioned, "Can't believe I witnessed history at Gate 12. Respect, Ms. Morgan." She allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The real work lay ahead, transforming policy into practice, words into culture. But today, the world had seen that Skylux Airlines was serious about equity, and that was the first, indispensable step toward lasting change. Over the next 2 days, every Skylux terminal pulsed with activity as crew members, pilots, flight attendants, ground staff, and even executives swapped their uniforms for training badges. Conference rooms in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and Atlanta were transformed into immersive workshops. The 48-hour bias lockdown was more than a webinar series. It was a full-spectrum experience built around real cabin footage scenarios, role-playing exercises, and guest speakers who had endured discrimination in the skies. On day one, Brittany Shaw sat in a circle with a dozen colleagues, headphones on, reacting to a VR simulation. A passenger shunned because of accent. She felt her jaw tighten as actors spat slurs, then learned to intervene. Verbal de-escalation techniques practiced until her voice rang with confidence. At breaks, she exchanged knowing looks with Jessica and Trevor, sharing glances that said, "I see you. We're changing this." Meanwhile, in Chicago, the investor relations team listened to stories from frontline staff forced to serve VIPs at the expense of courtesy. They drafted new service scripts that prioritized fairness. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Morgan. May I offer you a choice of seating based on reservation order?" They scribbled policies that would replace whispered sidebars with clear, equitable protocols. Day two unfolded with deeper reflection. Employees wrote anonymous notes about moments they'd stayed silent when they should have spoken up. These honesty cards were posted on digital boards at every hub, creating a mosaic of regrets and resolve. Senior managers led small group discussions, sharing their own missteps and pledging to hold teams accountable for respectful service. At the end of the second day, Celeste convened a live video address to all 8,000 Skylux employees. Her screen filled with faces, some anxious, some hopeful. "You've shown courage by confronting bias head-on," she said. "Now I'm proud to introduce Second Chance, our 6-month mentorship program. Staff who complete bias lockdown and demonstrate genuine growth will be paired with coaches, attend leadership seminars, and earn certification in equitable service." She smiled as she announced that participants would receive performance bonuses and priority consideration for promotions. "Accountability comes with opportunity," she emphasized. "We're not here to punish. We're here to build a culture where dignity guides every decision." In airports around the country, light glowed from open training rooms late into the evening. Ground crew huddled over new service manuals. Pilots rehearsed revised pre-flight announcements that welcomed inquiries rather than strangers. Flight attendants practiced empathy drills, active listening exercises that had them respond to mock passengers with phrases like, "I hear you," and "Your comfort matters." Passengers began to notice. A man on a delayed flight commented to his seatmate, "Did you hear that attendance announcement? It actually listed our names, not just 'ladies and gentlemen.'" A businesswoman posted on LinkedIn, "Kudos to Skylux for investing in real change. I just flew with them again." By the time Flight 3921 returned to its Vancouver origin, Skylux's reputation had quietly begun to shift. Social feeds showed candid snapshots of staff celebrating their training certificates, proud to be #Sky Ethica certified, and passengers thanking crews by name. The first-class cabin that once echoed with entitlement now hummed with genuine courtesy. In that collective effort, Celeste Morgan saw the seeds of a new airline culture, one where policy and principle flew side by side. And in every workshop completed, every apology voiced, and every second chance earned, Skylux moved closer to proving that real reform, like real power, takes flight only when we dare to change. The conference room at Gate 12 was tense and hushed as former Flight 3921 crew filed in. Brittany Shaw, Jessica Miller, Trevor Davis, and Captain Reynolds took seats around the sleek table, folders stamped confidential before them. Celeste Morgan entered quietly, carrying her leather tote and a calm authority that filled the room. She closed the door and looked each of them in the eye. "Thank you all for coming," she began, voice measured. "What happened on Flight 3921 was a breach of trust. You each took an oath to serve every passenger with dignity. When that promise broke, action had to follow." Brittany's cheeks flushed. Jessica's hands trembled on her folder. Trevor's jaw clenched. Captain Reynolds sat rigid, eyes flicking to the termination notices. Celeste placed the first envelope in front of Brittany. "Miss Shaw, this is your termination order." The folder contained her non-rehire clause, effective immediately across all partner carriers. "I know this feels abrupt," Celeste continued, "but these policies exist to protect everyone's dignity." Brittany closed her eyes, swallowing. I understand," she whispered. Celeste nodded and moved down the line, placing each termination notice in front of Jessica, Trevor, and Captain Reynolds. Each opened the folder with a sigh. Some looked down, others met Celeste's gaze with quiet remorse. When she reached the other side, Celeste folded her hands and softened her tone. "But this isn't just punitive. Accountability should lead to growth. That's why I'm offering Second Chance, a 6-month mentorship and retraining program." She tapped a folder stamped Second Chance program in front of Brittany. "Participants will receive coaching from subject matter experts, attend leadership seminars, and earn certification in equitable service." Jessica blinked, lifting her head. "You'd let us come back?" Celeste smiled gently. "Only if you commit fully. Complete the bias lockdown, demonstrate sincere growth, and you'll be welcome to reapply under rigorous standards. You'll also receive a performance bonus upon certification." Trevor's tension eased fractionally. That actually means something. Thank you." Captain Reynolds cleared his throat. "I've led crews for 30 years. I should have intervened sooner. This program, maybe it's what I need." Celeste leaned forward. "Acknowledging mistakes is the first step. Embracing change is the next. Skylux needs leaders who will uphold dignity without exception." She stood and tapped a printed schedule on the table. "Here's the timeline. Orientation next Monday, 2-day immersive training, weekly mentorship sessions, monthly progress reviews. Complete the program by December, and we'll reevaluate your service roles." The 4 former crew members exchanged hopeful glances. Brittany traced the words "Orientation, Monday, 9 a.m." with her fingertip. Jessica whispered, "I can do this." Celeste closed her folder and offered one last message. "This isn't about taking away livelihoods. It's about restoring trust and creating a team we can all be proud of. I believe in redemption and in your capacity to lead Skylux into a new era." She gathered her tote and headed toward the door. As she opened it, she paused. "Thank you for your courage," she said. "I'll see you at orientation." Brittany stood first, offering a shaky smile. "Thank you, Ms. Morgan." One by one, Jessica, Trevor, and Captain Reynolds rose, nodding in gratitude. Celeste stepped out, leaving them in a room where endings became beginnings, and where accountability opened the door to redemption. Airports around the world were abuzz with curiosity and cautious optimism. Word of Skylux's 48-hour bias lockdown and Second Chance program had spread beyond the terminal gates into industry forums and regulatory briefings. In Dallas, Delta's training director, Malik Brooks, sat at his desk reviewing a request from Skylux, a proposal to co-host joint workshops on unconscious bias. Malik tapped his pen against the desk. He'd heard mixed reviews from his staff who'd seen Skylux's viral footage. But 2 days of curated training calls with Celeste Morgan's bias experts had convinced him it was worth pursuing. He picked up the phone and dialed the number that changed everything. "Let's schedule that first session for next month." Meanwhile, across the Atlantic in London, British Airways cabin service lead Fiona Clark forwarded Skylux's training modules to her global network. She'd watched her own crews flounder last week when confronted with a similar seating dispute. Now, she saw a blueprint that prioritized policy over privilege. An email landed in Celeste's inbox. Invitation to speak at IATA's 2025 Service Excellence Summit. Back in Chicago, the Department of Transportation's Regulatory Office convened a roundtable with major airlines, consumer advocates, and civil rights organizations. "We need a uniform standard for passenger equity," the DOT director declared, as he clicked through a slideshow titled Sky Ethica Accord, a framework for inclusive air travel. Representatives from United, American, and Emirates nodded in agreement. The accord proposed mandatory bias training, transparent incident reporting, and passenger feedback channels across carriers. Over video link, Celeste joined the discussion. She shared Skylux's internal metrics: a 75% drop in discrimination complaints, a 42% uptick in passenger satisfaction across all classes, and from 200 employees certified through Second Chance. "This isn't just good PR," she said. "It's measurable impact. Let's make these best practices industry-wide." By week's end, the SkyEthica Accord had been signed by 12 major airlines representing 60% of global traffic. It mandated standardized bias lockdown, a 2-day immersive training for all cabin and ground crew, repeated biannually. Transparent reporting, public quarterly disclosure of discrimination incidents and resolutions. Passenger Equity Council, a consumer airline advisory board to review policies and feedback. Second Chance Program, industry-recognized retraining paths for crew members who demonstrate accountability. In Tokyo, ANA's CEO published an open letter. "We applaud Skylux's leadership and commit to adopting the SkyEthica framework to ensure every passenger feels valued." On social media, hashtags like #SkyEthica Accord and #Airline Equity now trended alongside reports of airlines updating their crew manuals and service scripts. Within Skylux itself, managers fielded calls from competitors eager to license the training modules. The Operations Center scheduled Slack channels with joint training calendars. Morgan Equinox Capital's council fine-tuned licensing agreements, ensuring the program remained affordable while preserving Skylux's intellectual property. Meanwhile, civil rights groups and travel bloggers debated the long-term impact. Some cautioned that lasting change required more than training. It needed cultural buy-in. But many praised the Accord as a watershed moment. "For the first time, we're seeing an industry united on equity," wrote one leading travel journalist. Celeste watched the flurry of endorsements and invitations on her laptop. She felt a quiet pride, but also a deep responsibility. Leading an industry-wide reform wasn't just about Skylux's turnaround. It was about ensuring that dignity became a baseline expectation in air travel everywhere. As dusk settled over Chicago, she closed her laptop and rose from her desk, the hum of the city below matching the new energy in terminals around the globe. Skylux's rivals had turned from skeptics into collaborators. Regulators had embraced standardized equity measures, and travelers were already noticing kinder, fairer service. Celeste stepped onto the rooftop terrace of Morgan Equinox's offices, the skyline painted in twilight hues. She let the breeze carry away the tension of the past week and simply breathed, knowing that a single first-class confrontation had sparked a movement, one that would reshape the skies for every passenger, everywhere. By sunrise over Boston's Beacon Hill, Celeste Morgan's day began not in a first-class cabin, but in her corner office overlooking the Charles River. The city's skyline was etched in gold light, reminders of history and possibility intertwined. On the wall behind her desk, a large digital map displayed Skylux's global routes, each line glowing green. Dignity-certified corridors from New York to Nairobi, London to Los Angeles. She pressed a button on her tablet, and the map zoomed in on Flight 3921's route, now a case study in policy enforcement and equity. Below it, real-time metrics scrolled. Discrimination complaints down 72%. Customer satisfaction scores up 48%, 1,200 employees certified through Second Chance, and 12 airlines signed on to the SkyEthica Accord. Celeste tapped her pen against her notebook. Earlier, she'd written one last journal entry for this chapter. True justice isn't retribution. It's accountability with compassion. Today, Skylux's wings carry more than passengers. They carry our shared dignity. She underlined shared dignity twice. It felt like a mission statement, a promise she intended to keep. Her phone buzzed with messages. An invitation to keynote the World Aviation Summit, a congratulatory note from the IATA chair, and a thank you email from a single mother who'd been upgraded after sharing her story of bias. Celeste smiled, grateful for the human faces behind the data. A soft knock preceded her assistant's entrance. "Ms. Morgan, your 9 a.m. with HR and the Service Excellence Council is ready. Then board meeting at 10. "Thank you, Anna," Celeste replied, slipping the notebook into her leather tote. She paused to gaze at the digital map once more. Each illuminated line represented flights where every passenger, from economy to first class, would now be heard, seen, and served with respect. Down the hall, HR leaders greeted her with crisp agendas. They discussed updates to the loyalty program, reward points no longer tied to legacy status, but to equitable engagement, timely responses to feedback, demonstrated courtesy, and inclusive initiatives. It was a small shift on paper, but a giant leap for passenger trust. Next, the Service Excellence Council convened in a sunlit boardroom. Celeste joined union representatives, flight crew delegates, and customer advocacy liaisons. The group reviewed pilot programs, passenger town halls at major hubs, live chat support for onboard concerns, and an AI-driven feedback kiosk in each cabin. A young flight attendant showcased a prototype, a touchscreen panel on the seatback allowing real-time ratings of service interactions. "It's about closing the feedback loop," she explained. "Passengers see their input matter instantly." Celeste nodded. "Empowerment breeds accountability," she said. "Let's pilot this on Flight 3921 first. Symbolic justice, lived forward." The room buzzed with excitement. By mid-morning, she joined the full board via video. Shareholders logged in from across time zones, curious and cautious. Celeste opened with a succinct report. The crisis had spurred a comprehensive equity overhaul, delivering both moral and financial returns. SKX shares up 12% year-to-date. Then she posed the question that guided every decision. How do we make dignity non-negotiable? The board discussed expanded training funding, community partnerships, and a phased rollout of the Sky Ethica framework to regional carriers. Every proposal aligned with that core principle. Policy and principle must always fly in tandem. As the meeting adjourned, Celeste allowed herself a moment to close her eyes and breathe. 12 chapters had taken her from a seat dispute to an industry-wide accord. 12 chapters had tested her resolve, sharpened her strategy, and reaffirmed her belief that leadership meant more than leverage. It meant lifting others. She stood and gazed out at the river below, its current steady and unwavering. In the soft morning light, she whispered to herself, "Dignity is non-negotiable." Then she turned back to her desk, ready to write the next chapter, one where every flight, every passenger, and every crew member could say they traveled not just through air, but through an atmosphere of respect. Below her window, the city stirred. Above the clouds, Skylux's wings carried a promise fulfilled, and the world watched with renewed hope. Respect over privilege. What would you do in her shoes? Quietly accept a seat change and move on. Stand your ground and refuse to budge. Pull an unexpected power move like Celeste did. Drop your answers below. Like and subscribe if this story inspired you. Share with #dignity is non-negotiable and equity in the sky to keep the conversation going.